Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To our beloved lecturer, Professor Maima, and our fellow classmates, my name is Musfirah Safinah Binti Nasir. My other group members are Aisy, Aleya, Adib, and Syasya. We are going to present about the secondary sources of Shariah, which is istishab, urf, sadal, darai, maslahah mursala, and istihsan. And we will explain more about our understanding on the sources and relate it with the application in Islamic finance. Okay, firstly I will explain about istishab or presumption of continuity. Literally, the meaning of istishab is escorting or accompaniment, but technically it is maintenance of status quo until there is evidence to support its changes. For the Shafi'is and Hanbalis, istishab means continuation of that which is proven, the negation of that which had not existed. In other words, presumes the continuation of both positive and negative until the contrary is established by evidence. For example, in positive sense, contract of sale is presumed to remain in force until there is a change. The ownership of the purchaser presumed to continue until a transfer of ownership can be established by evidence. Or other than that is the marital status of spouse. It can be dissolution of marriage by evidence. Okay, next, istishab is divided into 4 types. Firstly, presumption of original absence, istishab al-adam al-asli. This means that until the contrary is proved, a law or fact that did not exist previously is presumed to not exist. As a result, it assumes that a child and an uneducated person will continue to be that way until their status changes, such as when they reach the age of majority or when they obtain educational qualification. In the Islamic finance, if A, who is trading partner to B, claims that he has made no profit, the presumption of absence will be in A's favor unless B can prove the otherwise. Okay, secondly, the presumption of original presence is istishab al-wujud al-asli. The presence or existence of that which is indicated by reason or the law is taken for granted by this variety of istishab. For instance, if A is known to be in debt to B, he is presumed to be in debt until it is proved that he has either paid the debt or been cleared of it. The presumption of the loan's continuity is established by the fact that B's loan to A has already established as a fact. B does not have to prove the loan's continuity every day of the month. In a similar vein, the purchaser is presumptively liable to pay the purchase price due to the presence of the contract of sale until it is established that he has done so. In the same way, if a marriage contract is valid, a husband is responsible for paying his wife the dower, which is mahar, unless there is evidence to the contrary. Istishab assumes that liability or right exists in each of these situations, and the ulama also agree that this kind of istishab is valid, so it must prevail until the contrary is proven. Okay, the third one is istishab al-hukm, juristical. It assumes that the general rules of principles of the law will remain unchanged. As was mentioned earlier, istishab is concerned about not only with the presumption of facts but also with the established laws and principles. As a result, istishab assumes that the Shariah prohibitions and permissibilities, which is halal and haram, will always be valid. It will be assumed that any law, whether prohibitive or permissive, will remain in effect until the contrary is proved. However, if there is no such ruling, the Ibahah principle, which is the general rule of Sharia law regarding a matter that is deemed beneficial and without negative consequences, will be used. Therefore, it will be assumed to be permissible when the law does not address a matter and it is not contrary to a reason. Okay, lastly, istishab al-wasf. nature, and characteristic. The quantity of attributes such as assume that the clean water purified being an attribute will always be so until the opposite is proven. For instance, by changing its color, smell, or taste. Similarly, with the attribute of ritual purity, tahara, is presumed to continue until it is tainted when an individual makes an ablution to perform the salah. Tahara cannot be invalidated by the mere possibility that it was tainted. Okay, similarly with the cases of when a guarantor, kafil, kafalah, being a legal attribute, remains liable for the debt he or she guarantees until either the debtor pays the debt or the creditor release the guarantor from the payment. Okay, that's all from me. The other presenter will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mus. Next, I'll be explaining about urf. As we all know, urf are defined as customs textually. It is the subject of the Arabic verb arafa, which meaning to know. That which is known as opposed to what is unknown is the basically literal meaning of the word urf itself. The customs and the practices of certain community are discussed whether they are beneficial or bad to the society and the environment, owing to its technical validity. The term urf refers to the repeated actions that morally upright individuals can overlook. And furthermore, it only relates to the practices that human nature has that recognized as being just and that have been supported by the rational evidence to be such. Customary law, or also known as urf, is one of the most important additional sources in Islamic law. This is shown by the fact that numerous legal rulings or ahkam in Islamic law, which was based on urf, changed depending on the circumstance, place, time, location, and many more. The contemporary financial system also poses a number of difficult issues and obstacles for Muslims. And as we all learn, Muslims are strictly prohibited from taking part in riba under Islamic law. And as a result of the interest-based nature of the modern financial system, this nowadays and all the time, Muslims have a very difficult time engaging in it from time to time. Next is the application of urf to the Islamic banking and finance system. So, the fundamental difference between Islamic banks and the existing commercial banks or the conventional banks is the avoidance of riba in Islamic banking. Islamic banks are also universal or multi-purpose banks and not purely commercial banks. Cross between commercial banks and investment banks, investment trusts, and the investment management institution. So, since the Islamic bank would share in the risk of the consignment, venture, business, or indemnity, it basically need to be more careful in the evaluation of the applications. Because the activities of the banks will be based on the commercial transaction that is allowed in Islam, including mudarabah, ijarah, buy bitaman ajal, and murabaha. And during the 1970s century, efforts were made in various Muslim countries to establish Islamic banks. Basically, the objectives of these Islamic banks in general have been to promote, foster, and develop the application of Islamic principles, law, and tradition to the transaction of financial, banking, and all the related business affairs to the banks. Urf or customs is recognized as the source of law in almost all the legal systems, including Shariah. The changing needs of a society are often reflected in its customs, which are in many ways the buzz of the society's adjustments to their new conditions. Custom is also appointed at once of the people's needs and their acceptance to change. It is inherently active and open-ended and always remains accessible to further refinement. So the role that customs has played in the development has great deal of what is known in the name of ijma, consensus of jurists, maslahah, public good, and fatwa, juristic opinion, often originates in the customs and living experience of the community. So moreover, the application of urf in Islamic finance can be traced back as early as the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, while the Prophet time. And furthermore, the operation of both banks in deposit products are based on urf, which are current, saving, and investment account, because they are well known to depositee and the depositors, while all of the form of bank deposits in conventional banking are governed with interest, which interest riba is strictly prohibited in Islamic bank. So the taste of some of the practice product assimilated the differences between conventional bank and Islamic bank, because Islamic banks forbid riba, unjustness, and earning a return without taking a risk, but encourages profit and risk sharing at the end, while the difference in actual cash flow could be the same. The underlying structures are quite distinct. There is some competition for funds, especially in the two systems where both conventional and Islamic banks are available. So for this case, it is sometimes difficult to identify difference between both products unless one carefully examines their underlying structures. So I believe that is all for my part for urf custom. Next, I will pass to Adib. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a good day. I would like to wish to Prof. Maima and my fellow classmate. My name is Adib Zahiruddin, B193131097. Now I would like to proceed the presentation with my part, which is Sad Al-Dari. Okay, Sad. What is Sad? Sad is to block or to prevent. Al-Dari is a plural word which signify means that leads to maslahah maslahah or masfadah. So technically, Sad Al-Dari means blocking the permissible act that lead to an evil. So okay, there are examples of Sad Al-Dari in Quran. In the verse in surah and verse like I shared in the slides. But firstly, we need to know the concept of Sad Al-Dari is founded on the idea of prevention of evil before it materializes. Okay, this means that it must conform to the ends objective of Shariah, and ends must prevail over the means. If the means violate the purpose of Shariah, this must be blocked. So the purpose of Maqasid Shariah are identifiable from the text. So there's also example of Sad Al-Dari in Sunnah, where Prophet Muhammad SAW, peace be upon him, forbade a creditor to take gift from debtor, because this action could lead to an interest where we cannot in Islam, interest is prohibited. So such as you can see in Islamic banking, when they offer financing to help the Muslim people to strengthen the economy or to stir up to have a better financial, they don't offer interest rate on it, but they have a profit rate instead. So Imam Shafi'i said that when the law of intention is invalid in a contract, is haram, not cancel in the point of view of him. This could be explained by Imam Shafi'i. He looks into formation of contract and transaction. If the contracting parties expressly state in their contract of unlawful intention, such contract is prohibited. However, if they do not expressly state, such contract is not prohibited. Move on to the next slide, which is the features of Sad Al-Dari. Okay, the first feature is anything which definitely lead to evil. This is totally forbidden, such as drink alcohol, drink wine to get drunk. So second one is anything which most likely to lead to evil and rarely leads to benefit. For example, selling grapes to a winemaker. In this case, most ulama have invalidated such means. So the next one, anything which frequently lead to evil, but there is no certainty or even dominant probability. In this case, ulama has a wide different on the illegality of such means. So the last one is anything which rarely lead to evil. For example, digging a well in a place which is not likely to cause harm or speaking a word of truth to a tyrannical ruler. In this case, ulama have ruled in favor of permissibility of these means. So moving on to the last slide, which is the application of Said al-Darai. As you can see in the general application, where the first one is the fornication or zina. We all know that zina or fornication is prohibited in Islam because it is not healthy and is against the Islam thoughts, and it is also stated in Al-Quran. The second one is purposely hurt mankind. Okay, this would be judged illegal, and therefore and also immoral by virtue of bearing the means. So by blocking the means must therefore entail preventing something bad from happening, right? Not something good. Okay, the last one is the selling grapes to the winemaker, as I explained before. And moving on to the Islamic banking perspective, the fraud. Fraud is dishonesty, which is not as what Islam taught. The second one is bai'ah. And bai'ah, for example, simple example, it is a sale and buyback agreement. For instance, A sells car for 20,000 to B and a payable at future date by deferred payment, and later A buys it back from B for 15,000 payable at one cash. So this is not there's no fairness in this. So Imam Shafi'i doesn't agree with deferred payment, but some of the scholars agreed. And the last one is unknown deposit source. Unknown deposit source in where Muslim taught us to be transparent and to know the source of the income is halal or haram. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Syasya, and I'm going to explain about maslahah, which is public interest. The word maslahah is an Arabic word, comes from the root word of salaha, which means good, beneficial, and not destructive. The word maslahah also refers to the noun of salah, and the mufrad, single word for maslahah, which means goodness or loss of harm and benefit from some things, which means some things that can bring profits and provide welfare is considered as a maslahah. The thing that is said to bring good is a human act that gives benefits and a positive impact, which is called khairto, particularly, or society generally. In this regard, maslahah is something that brings good to human beings because it has benefits in it and prioritize the public interest. Maslahah refers to the protections of the objective of Shariah, which is to preserve religion, life, intellect, and property through the approach of embracing as many benefits as possible and avoiding anything that can be harmful. Maslahah, according to Al-Ghazali, means to produce good or avoid the bad. That is included in the expressions getting rid of harm is more important than taking good benefit. According to him, the notions of creating good and preventing bad is a servant's goal and achieving well-being when the goal is accomplished. However, what is meant by maslahah is the context of maqasid Shariah is to uphold and maintain the objective of Shariah towards their servant, which includes the protections in the aspects of religions, life, intellect, and property. Okay, and then we move to types of maslahah. They got three types. First one is masalih mutabara, that is acknowledged by Shariah. It includes all types of maslahah where the Quran and Sunnah enacted a law for its realization. There are 3 types, namely essential public interest, which is daruriyah, needed public interest, hajiyat, and refining public interest, tahsiniyat. For example, maslahah of preservation of religion, life, reasons, and property. These types of maslahah can be relied upon. The second one is masalih mulghad, that is rejected by Shariah. It is one that is not acknowledged by the Shariah. This type of maslahah is nullified by Quran and Sunnah. For example, practicing usury in taxation, prohibition of polygamy, equal share of men and women in the inheritance. This type of maslahah cannot be relied upon. And then the last one is masalih mursalah. It is neither acknowledged nor rejected by Shariah. That is not text validates, it is not invalidates it. For example, the compilations of the Quran using the present liability of trustee, registration of marriage, HIV test for those to get marriage. And then the conditions of valid masalih mursalah. The first one is must not be in conflict with definitive proof of the Quran and Sunnah. Second one must be genuine. It really brings benefits and remove harm. Second one must be general, securing benefits and removing harm to the people as a whole and not to a particular person or group of person. And then the last one is must be reasonable. It is acceptable by people of wise reason. Okay, for applications in contemporary Islamic bank and banking issues, the concept of maslahah is widely used in Islamic finance and banking. It's the products developed by Islamic financial institutions are closely related to human needs in their daily life. The investment in company conducting mixed activities, which is between halal and haram, with the ratio of illegal activities are relatively small. Because of this, Muslim investors are facing difficulties to venture into investment companies which overall activities are halal, because most of the investment activities are mixed between halal and haram and does not meet the Sharia requirements. These requirements can be based on the concept of maslahah, and by considering the drawbacks of Muslim investors, it is permissible for Muslim investors to invest in mixed companies because of maslahah. And this is because if they are not allowed to invest in mixed companies, they cannot develop their properties through investing in shares and do not get the opportunities to dominate these companies through the purchase of shares to convert it for fully Sharia compliant companies or shares. So for the maslahah of the Muslim economy and the need to convert mixed shares to fully Sharia compliant shares through the control of most of the company's shares, the involvement in investment of mixed companies is allowed based on the concept of maslahah. Thank you.
So thank you, Sasha, for the explanation of maslahah mursala. So I'm Aish, and I'm going to talk about the juristic reference of istihsan. So what is actually istihsan? Istihsan means to deem or consider something good. So the definition that comes down to us now is the result of the study of the mutaahirin jurists. So the scholars of USUL have given so many definitions about istihsan because of their agreement about istihsan, agreement who scholars that reject the argument of istihsan being a definition that can give the impression of istihsan is the only source of law that is relied upon the thoughts and intellect of mujtahid alone. And for scholars who try defending istihsan, they bring a definition that shows that istihsan is a comparison between the argument of Sharia to choose the correct argument stronger and give more benefits to human. To conclude, the researcher divide the definition presented by this scholar into 2 sections. According to Zahiruddin, istihsan can be realized in two situations. First, in a situation where the jury found an issue which come under a general text or principle of fiqh, and thus the ruling of the issues and its existing precedent are based on this general text and established principle of fiqh. There are specific proof that the issue, namely ijma, necessity, custom, public interest, which indicate another ruling different from the ruling based on general text and established principle of fiqh. So the juries found that the ruling based on specific proof is more favorable than, and he acted on it. Secondly, when the juries found an issue which is no ruling in Quran, Sunnah, and Ijma, but there are two conflicting proofs of analogies for the issues. One is manifest analogy and another is concealed analogy. And he found that the concealed analogy is more strong. So how can we apply this istihsan in Islamic finance? So the fact that loan may be regarded as usury because of a dirham is traded for another, istihsan allows it. Why? Because the way it benefit the community. So community might go through a lots of hardship if loans had remained illegal. The scholars of istihsan build justice that prevents distress among community. So regulated short selling, RSS, is specified Shariah compliant shares is one of the relevant resolution that expressly uses by phrase istihsan. So by selling securities while not actually owning them, it might be considered as istihsan, and it can be implied by investors selling their shares, let's say 5 ringgit Malaysia, which they do not own, and then they're buying them back at, let's say, at 3 ringgit Malaysia to close the position and anticipating that a decline in the price of their shares. So in this situation, investor really borrow those shares from the brokerage firm under the theory of an ijara, which is lease contract, in order to sell them. So investor would make money if there was a 2 ringgit Malaysia difference between the selling price and the purchase price in this situation. And the Securities Commission Sharia Advisory Council SACSC has determined that istihsan is the foundation of RSS permissibility. The analysis of this case, however, is based on istihsan, according to which the lease is permitted to sell their shares, and the lessor should return the shares after the lease asset has been transferred to the third party with their permission. The istihsan in this instance was based on maslahah in order to provide liquidity for the stock market. Last but not least, a salam contract is a sale agreement in which the buyer pays the money in advance and the delivery of the subject matter is delayed until a specific future period. It is a form of financing for small business owners and farmers, and microbanks and other financial institutions use it to aid small business. It is mostly utilized for working capital financing, commercial and industrial financing, financing for export, financing for operations, and financing for capital costs. That is all from my group. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Thank you.